Well, hello there, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Wrestling Highlights of the Week, presented by My Two Cents Podcast, hosted by G2. I am G2. Now, for the first-time listeners and returning listeners, I would like to say hello to you. For the first-time listeners, if you have no idea what this program is, well, let me tell you what this program consists of. It consists of me talking about everything that happened in the world of professional wrestling, whether it comes from the world of WWE, AEW, or TNA. I'll be giving you highlights of what you saw or you didn't see if you have not to watch their programming this week. Now, for WWE, we're coming out of the Royal Rumble that happened last Saturday, so I'm going to be talking about the Royal Rumble winners and them popping up on different shows, like Jey Uso popped up on Raw and he popped up on SmackDown. Charlotte Flair, she took the opposite approach. She popped up on all three brands. So I'm going to talk about that. For AEW, we're building up into their Grand Slam event that's happening in Australia. So I'm going to be talking about the build up more into that. And for TNA, I'm going to continue to talk about their crossing of their partnership that they have with NXT. So with that being stated, let's start the show. I'm going to start off with AEW first. AEW this week, I'll say it was a pretty good show. We are still building up into the whole Death Riders deal. We started off with Jay White being interviewed by Renee Paquette, and as he's being interviewed, you saw the Death Riders pop up on Jay, but unbeknownst to the Death Riders, you saw rated FTR behind them, which is FTR and Adam Copeland. So you'll get this big brawl to start off Dynamite. It'll be backstage, which will lead into the ring. Ultimately, rated FTR and Jay White would send the Death Riders packing and retreating. You first would get Adam Copeland sending out a challenge to Jon Moxley to a match at Grand Slam for the AEW World Title. Jon Moxley would turn that down. Then you would get Jay White making a challenge to Jon Moxley and Claudio for a Brisbane brawl, which to my understanding is more than likely a street fight or no holds barred matchup. It'll be Jay White and Adam Copeland going against Claudio and Moxley. More than likely that will be signed off. It was not official, but you kind of can tell they're going to make that official, if not by Collision this Saturday, by the time you listen to this, or they'll make it official on Dynamite. So that's more than likely going to be the case there. So that happened there. You had Will Ospreay going against a mystery member of the Don Callis family, a new member, if you will. The new member would be Mark Davis. Mark Davis is the partner of Kyle Fletcher, and previously, last time you saw him on AEW, he was fighting with Will Ospreay to take on the Don Callis family. So you saw Will Ospreay, he was confused why Mark Davis is with Don Callis family. And Don Callis was on commentary, and for the people at home, we got to understand why Mark Davis is with the Don Callis family. And he's with them because it's against his own will. Don Callis would talk about how when Kyle Fletcher and Mark Davis signed over to the Don Callis family a couple years ago, it kind of gave Don Callis like power over them. And Kyle Fletcher, he's bought into Don Callis, and that's why Kyle Fletcher just cool with Don. While Mark Davis isn't truly cool with Don, he's doing this against his will. So if Mark wants to get paid, he has to be on television and do what Don Callis tells him to do. And you know what's funny about this? Before I get to it, Will Ospreay would defeat Mark Davis. Cool. Great. What I find funny about this is that Don Callis is playing the part of Tony Khan a little bit in hindsight when you look at some of the stuff that's been playing around on the internet. And what I mean by that is this. When Don Callis was on commentary, he talked about how Mark Davis would have to either be sitting at home and not get paid, or either he pops up on television, do my bidding, and he will get paid. That's kind of the thing with Tony Khan right now with some of the AEW wrestlers that's kind of not on your television screens, like with the Miros and with the Ray Phoenix and with some of the other wrestlers like a Ricky Starks. If you don't want to do what Tony Khan asks of you to do or wants you to do, you'll be sitting at home. So I like that they kind of sprinkled that in for like some of the smart Mark fans to like kind of put those two and two together. I'm not certain the people actually did put that together, but I did when Don Callis said that on commentary. So there you go with that. Again, that's a little insider baseball right there. After the match was over, Don Callis' family would try to come out to do something to Will Ospreay, but Kenny Omega would come out. And again, this is all for the lead up to their tag matchup at Grand Slam Australia, where Ospreay and Omega will be going against Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher. And now, speaking of Takeshita and Fletcher, they will be in a tag match against the Hounds of Hell, which is Brody King and Buddy Matthews. That's their stable name now, since Malachi Black is essentially going from AEW. So in the Hounds of Hell, you have Brody, you have Buddy, and you have Julia Hart. Fletcher and Takeshita will win the match. Now, during this match, Buddy Matthews would be distracted by Okada's entrance music, thinking that Okada will come out because Buddy has been getting into a little something with Okada on Collision, and they have an upcoming match at the Grand Slam Australia event. And they're going to be fighting for that, the Continental Championship. So Buddy would get distracted. This allowed Takeshita and Fletcher to get the advantage on the Hounds of Hell, which would give them the win ultimately. So this gives Takeshita and Fletcher some momentum as they go into their match with Omega and Ospreay down the line. You have Toni Storm going against Queen Aminata. Toni Storm would come out in Mariah May gear and completely just copy Mariah May, the same way that Mariah May copied Toni Storm's rocker look whenever she was under the wing of Toni Storm. And what made it great was Mariah May, she was on commentary for this. So Mariah May would just have to sit there and watch as Toni Storm basically played the part of Mariah May in the match against Queen Aminata. Toni Storm would win the match with the Mayday on Queen Aminata. After the match was over, Toni would have an interview and she would still play the part of Mariah May in the interview, mimicking the way that Mariah May does her speeches. Mariah May would get on the ring apron. You would see Toni and Mariah have the stare down, and Mariah would just get off the apron and then walk to the back. So again, building more towards their match at Grand Slam Australia. I'm cool with this. This is one of the storylines I'm actually fond of with Mariah May and Toni, and I made this specifically clear, and I'm going to say it again. When this match is over at Grand Slam, I don't care whether it's Toni or Mariah May. I don't care who walks out with the AEW Women's Championship. I want whoever walks out as a champion to enter into a feud with someone and give it some bones. Give it some oomph. Because right now, that AEW Women's Championship has been in limbo since Mariah May won it at All In. She hasn't had any meaningful type of feuds or rivalries with anyone. It's always been like, okay, we know Mariah May is going to be facing off against Toni at some point, so we got to keep the belt on Mariah May. And since then, it just seems that they never put her in anything like of importance. Now with them doing this again with Toni, which we all knew they would go back to it, I'm hoping that after, again, this whole thing is done with at Grand Slam, either Toni or Mariah, whoever is holding that AEW Women's World Championship, will roll over into a feud with someone and bring that world title back to the level that it should be, the way that Toni Storm was able to have that world title mean something whenever she was champion. So that's just me giving my little 2 cents on that one. You had MJF. He had a in-ring segment. He talked about putting Jeff Jarrett down last week, saying that he should have teamed up with MJF instead of defying MJF. So it seems that MJF is kind of moving away from Jeff Jarrett, and it seems like AEW is actually doing what the fans wanted them to do. Because MJF and Jeff Jarrett, it seemed cool, like, all right, we're going to get this situation between Jeff and MJF. They're going to do something here. But once, I believe they had a segment 2 weeks ago where those two went back and forth. It seemed like nobody was really truly interested in it. So I'm glad that they did kind of pivot away from that. And now entering the Jeff Jarrett spot is going to be Dustin Rhodes. Dustin will come out and Dustin will have some words toward MJF for speaking bad on friends of Dustin's, especially the deceased Owen Hart, and Dustin would talk to MJF saying that MJF is a disrespectful little punk and talking down to people that have been fighting sobriety. Dustin will talk about how he's been to hell and came back, and how he's been some odd years clean. And MJF, being the snot-nosed punk that he is, he would say to Dustin, "It took you 36 years to come out of the shadow of your father, only for you to be stuck now in the shadow of your baby brother." And as soon as he said brother, you saw Dustin hit MJF right in the face. So you get those two brawling. You get security come out to separate Dustin and MJF. And MJF would be outside the ring, start walking to the back, put his hands in the air, tell him I'm cool. Then he would run back in the ring, and now you get, again, Dustin and MJF breaking away free from the security, and MJF would just kick Dustin right in the nuts. Dustin would drop. MJF would leave the ring satisfied with himself. And we have a match set up for next week, MJF versus Dustin Rhodes. So there you go with that. Now, I do have to make mention, when MJF was doing his whole little talk before Dustin came out, Hangman Page would come chasing after Max Caster. Max Caster would come in the ring, ask for MJF to kind of like hide him from Hangman, because you had Hangman and Max Caster have a little talk backstage, because Max Caster was looking for Hangman to kind of put a beat down on Anthony Bowens and Billy Gunn. But Hangman said, "I would do that, but they're not here. But you're here, and I'm free." Max Caster, again, would run away from Hangman, so that's how we get into this position. Max is looking for MJF to hide him. MJF tells Max Caster to leave the ring. That's when Hangman will come out. And then you will get this stare down between MJF and Hangman once again. And this is now the third week in a row that we have MJF and Hangman staring down with one another. And I think we're going to get a match between those two at Revolution. And I think they need to start building towards that. I hope after MJF's match with Dustin next week, we start building towards MJF and Hangman, because those two have some history with one another, like some real deep history that hasn't really been unearthed since the beginning of AEW. Because MJF would take little pot shots at Hangman from time to time, year after year, but Hangman just never really paid attention to it because he's always been doing his own thing. But now, since those two are actually coming eye to eye, and they've been doing this for the last 3 weeks, hopefully, after MJF is done with Dustin, we can get to that. Also, just for me being a nerd here, I did like how Max Caster did go to MJF for help. Because if you remember MJF's dealings with the whole who's behind the devil business leading up to, what was it? I believe World's End. Whenever MJF had to team up with the Acclaim, Max Caster was the only guy trying to help MJF and willing to help MJF. So I did like how they did go full circle here with Max going towards MJF to try to protect him here. So you had that going on here. You had the Hurt Syndicate come out for their championship, like, I'm not going to say celebration, but just for MVP to come out and say something. MVP would like give a little congrats to Private Party for being tag champions until they met up with the Hurt Syndicate and say, "Hey, Private Party, they were a great team, but they went against two mountainous of men of Bobby and Shelton. So that's just what ends up happening to you. You end up getting hurt, and Hurt Syndicate ends up taking your gold." So Hurt Syndicate will put out the challenge to any tag team, saying that if any tag team was to step up and challenge the Hurt Syndicate for the tag titles, you know what to do. Step up. And out walks the Guns. Colton Gunn, Austin Gunn. They've been away for at least, I'll say, a couple months. Probably October, November, maybe. They weren't around during the Continental Classic. So that started, I believe, in December. So December, November time. But I'm going to say October. Either way, doesn't matter. They've been away for months. So they're back here. They step in the ring. They made their challenge known. They want to face against the Hurt Syndicate. MVP says you guys will get the match next week. And that set it up for next week there. So that's cool. I expect it to be another kind of kill 'em all type match. 80-20. Hurt Syndicate doing dominance of 80% of the match, while the Guns will try to do something in the other 20. But Hurt Syndicate is more than likely going to retain their tag titles next week. And in the main event of Dynamite this week, you have Swerve Strickland going against Ricochet. Ricochet would win the match by... he won the match by mischievous means, because when Swerve would look for the Swerve Stomp and Ricochet's in position, Swerve would jump off the top, Ricochet would put his hands up, and he would hit Swerve in the nuts. And this will have Swerve drop to his knees. This will allow Ricochet to hit the Spirit Gun and cover Swerve for the win. And after the match was over, you got Prince Nana coming in to check up on Swerve. And Nana's holding the embassy jacket, the robe, that Swerve will walk out whenever he's having those big match moments. And Ricochet would grab that robe from Nana and shove Nana to the ground, and you see Ricochet ending Dynamite, just put it on that robe and walk into the back. So Ricochet now holds possession of something that Prince Nana holds real sacred to him. And it's kind of funny. One, first and foremost, Swerve and Ricochet, they had a nice not pay-per-view match, because they could do a great quality matchup on pay-per-view more than this, but it was still a good main event matchup nonetheless. But Ricochet taking that robe is a great heel move, and it kind of pays tribute to Jimmy Rave. Jimmy Rave's the first guy that I kind of look at when I see that embassy robe. And let me give you guys a little nerd history here. Jimmy Rave, a wrestler that passed away, he was in Ring of Honor, I want to say 2004, 2005. This was CM Punk was there. And Jimmy Rave, he would be the crown jewel of the embassy. And he was like one of the most hated or annoyed guys in Ring of Honor. Just like Ricochet. And just like Ricochet, the crowd would pelt Jimmy Rave with toilet paper. And you could probably see it either on some YouTube highlight clips or highlight compilations that people made, one of the two, because it was up a couple years ago. But Jimmy Rave was basically like the most annoyed / hated person in Ring of Honor at the time. So for Ricochet to kind of get that pelting of toilet paper and he's stealing the embassy jacket, it kind of does pay homage to what Jimmy Rave was doing. And for Ricochet, who is a Ring of Honor type guy who never got to work in Ring of Honor, it kind of does go like circular motion for him. So I'm glad that they are kind of doing that for the nerds, if you were a nerd that paid attention to that type of stuff, like myself. So again, Dynamite, it was a good episode to me. But that's all the highlights that came out of Dynamite this week. So with that said, that's your AEW Wrestling Highlights of the Week. And now I want to move over to the TNA NXT portion. I put those two together because obviously they got a business dealing with one another. I'll start off with TNA. TNA this week, you had in the main event the NXT Tag titles being defended. NXT Tag Champions Nathan Frazier and Axiom defending the titles against Ryan Nemeth and Nick Nemeth. You also had the Knockouts number one contender Battle Royal. You had Matt Cardona going against Mike Santana. The Hardys and Leon Slater going against the System, which represented the System was Moose, JDC, and Eddie Edwards. You had Ace Austin going against NXT wrestler Tyson DuPont. That's the guy that's with Wesley. You had Joe Hendry having a concert to start off TNA. He would perform a couple songs, and ultimately at the end he would be disrupted by Jake something, who will be challenging him for the TNA World Championship. So we got that match set up for next week. You had Ace Austin, as I said, going against Tyson DuPont. Ace Austin would defeat Tyson. And after the match was over, you had Wesley, Tyreek, and Tyson start beating up on Ace Austin. You had the Rascals come out to run off Tyson, Tyreek, and Wesley. So that's still continuing on with Wes and the Rascals, their whole business. And Wesley and his two guys, Tyson and Tyreek, I have a feeling they will probably be the first set of guys to probably win TNA gold and bring it over to NXT. I have a feeling that's going to be the situation going on there, because I don't see them putting Wesley in NXT winning the NXT top title right now. I think with him going over to TNA right now, I think that would be a great thing for him to do. Him helping Tyreek and Tyson win the the TNA tag titles first before they go out to NXT tag titles. I think that'd be great, because TNA, again, that is a place where you get to learn, go against independent wrestlers that are working everywhere, so you get to pick up parts of the trade from them, and you get to learn more about your craft. So I think them being the TNA tag champions, I think that will help them down the line, but only time will tell if that's the way they're going to go with this. But I still think Wes and Tyson and Tyreek will be the first couple guys to actually win TNA tag titles, or TNA titles in general, and bring it over to NXT. I do think that, as I said, you had the Hardys, who are the TNA tag team champions, by the way, and Leon Slater going against the System. The Hardys and Leon Slater would win the match. A thing that I did notice in this, when the Hardys music came out, they got, I feel, the biggest pop out of everybody. And it's probably because of the legacy thing, but when that Hardys music hit, people will get out their seats and start really cheering. That's always been a thing for the Hardys. And I tweeted this out at the Royal Rumble when I was watching it, because they show RVD on the screen. And RVD, he got one of the big pops for not even competing. He just got one of the big pops because they showed his face, right? I tweeted out, in the 2000s, no matter what, RVD and Jeff Hardy will get pops. And I mean, like, one of some of the big pops of the nights. And I got retweeted that by the people that make some of the jackets for TNA Blacksmith. And I thought that was pretty cool, first and foremost. But also, it made me stop and think about Jeff Hardy. I believe a couple weeks ago, he was on somebody's interview, and he mentioned how if he would have been on the right path, he would have been bigger than John Cena. And I've been thinking about that for the last couple weeks, periodically. And I gotta admit, Jeff Hardy, I think if he would have stayed off of the substances and he would have been on the clean path, I think that he probably could have been bigger than John Cena. If not bigger, probably toe-to-toe with John. Because Jeff Hardy, even with the substance abuse, he is still one of the most beloved guys out there. All right? And imagine with the WWE machine, the type of love and the type of articles of clothing the WWE could have done for Jeff Hardy if he would have stayed sober. That machine behind him would have been, I mean, just crazy. And again, I think him and John would have been fighting for the top spot for the Make-A-Wish stuff, but life is what it is, and that's just not the case. I think Jeff probably still did numbers with the Make-A-Wish stuff, but John, he is the most overall Make-A-Wish guy ever, so I'm glad that it still stayed in the wrestling realm for that. But I just think that if Jeff would have stayed on the right path, he probably just would have been neck and neck with John. I think it probably would have been 1 week John Cena, the next week would have been Jeff Hardy. They would have flip-flopped it, but Jeff saying that, it does put you in a mindset when you really start to think about him and his charisma and the it factor. People like to say that aura, but the it factor of Jeff, he's on to something. He's on to that. Anyway, again, that was just me just having a sidetrack and nerd thought there. Off of that, Matt Cardona, Mike Santana. Mike Santana would defeat Matt Cardona by hitting spin the block. So you had a cool match between the two competitors. You had the number one contender knockouts championship battle royal, which was won by Savannah Evans. Now, a note in this, NXT's Cora Jade, she would be on commentary. She would not be competing in this battle royal. She gave her reasoning for not competing in it because she says that she's Cora Jade. She's kind of better than doing this battle royal for it. So we kind of can see that Cora's probably going to get a championship opportunity somewhere down the line, but she just doesn't want to go do this. And also Tessa Blanchard. Tessa Blanchard, the new kind of standard in the knockouts division. She doesn't enter this battle royal because she already says point blank that there would be other women gunning for her. So that's the reason why she didn't participate in this. So she just sat in the back and watched it on the monitor. You'll see it periodically throughout this battle royal. Jazz, she would come into TNA here and actually enter herself in the battle royal, which was cool to see the legend Jazz pop here, but we all knew Jazz wasn't going to win. But as I said, Savannah Evans, she would win, so she gets a Knockouts Championship matchup, I believe, against Masha Slamovich next week on TNA, I believe. Main event, NXT Tag Titles, Faxion, which is Nathan Frazier and Axiom going against Ryan and Nick Nemeth. The champions would retain their tag titles. Nathan Frazier and Axiom would retain their belts. They would defeat the Nemeth brothers when Ryan would go for a steel chair. And Nick, he doesn't play dirty, at least right now. I still think they might tweak that a little bit, but as of right now, Nick Nemeth, he doesn't play dirty. He grabs a chair for his brother and say, "What are you doing? We're not doing that here." This allow Axiom to shove Ryan into Nick, and Nick will roll out of the ring. And this allow Axiom and Nathan Frazier to hit a double team move, which was Nathan Frazier, I believe, hitting a springboard drop kick onto Axiom, who was holding Ryan in a Russian leg sweep. So they hit that combo move, get the pin on Ryan. 1, 2, 3. Nathan Frazier, Axiom retain the NXT tag titles. Solid tag team matchup between both of the teams. Again, Nathan Frazier, Axiom, still one of the best tag teams legitimately out here doing it on the North American television scene. And hopefully they get called up to the main roster soon, because I do like this tag team. And again, I don't think there's much for them technically to do. I mean, if you want to keep them down at NXT still, and since we got this TNA collab, I mean, have them go against the Hardys if that's what you want to do. That'll be great for champion versus champion. And that way you can take the titles off of them, or they can hold on to the TNA tag titles. I don't think people would be minding of that. But I think Nathan Frazier and Axiom, they still should be a tag team one way or another, whether they go to the main roster together or they can stay in NXT and still do this TNA thing. They're a great tag team, and they proved it here with Ryan and Nick. So go check that match out. Now going over to the NXT portion of this partnership here. This week on NXT, you had Charlotte Flair pop up to basically just look at Julia and say that she's here to see if Julia can inspire her to pick her to go after the NXT Women's Championship at WrestleMania, which I know we all know that's not happening, but I'll get more into that when I talk about the stuff that happened on the main roster here. You had Bayley pop up when Roxanne and Julia were in the ring, because those three women will be facing off against each other in a triple threat match at Vengeance Day for the NXT Women's Championship. Funny thing about this, Roxanne Perez, she would say that Bayley couldn't get the job done on the main roster, so that's the reason why she came back to NXT to try to grab that NXT Women's Championship, because the NXT Women's Division has been running the gambit and kind of been the talk of the town. So that's the reason why Bayley's here. Bayley is already in a beef right now with Roxanne Perez, so you got those two wanting to tear at one another. And it just seems that Julia's like the third woman out, but she's the women's champion. So again, this could probably go to her advantage to beat both of those ladies next week. But again, time will tell. Cora Jade would come in. She would attack Bayley. She would attack Julia. And she would swing at Roxanne Perez, because Roxanne did mention now she doesn't need Cora, and how once Roxanne wins the NXT Women's Championship, she'll probably go to the main roster, win all the gold, and then she'll forfeit the NXT Women's Championship, and that's how Cora Jade will only win that NXT Women's title. So Cora Jade took some type of umbrage to Roxanne saying that, so that's the reason why she swung at Roxanne with the kendo stick there. But it seems that their little partnership is over, so there you go with that. In the main event, you had Obafemi and Trick Williams going against A-Town Down Under. A-Town Down Under would win their matchup against Oba and Trick thanks to interference from Eddie Thorpe, because towards the end of the match, Obafemi is taking on A-Town Down Under, and it seems that he has it underway and in control. Trick Williams, he would tag himself in. Oba doesn't look pleased at Trick, but he steps out cool. Trick's doing his business on A-Town Down Under, and it looks like he's going for his trick knee because he runs off the ropes, and as he hits the rope, Eddie Thorpe is there, and he would hit Trick in the back with a leather strap. And this will allow A-Town Down Under to take the advantage. Grayson Waller would hit his rolling flatliner on Trick Williams to get the win. And then after the match was over, Eddie Thorpe will come in and just start laying Trick Williams in with the lash, with the strap that he has. Just constantly start hitting him with it. And Obafemi would look at it, and he would just turn to the back because he has nothing to deal with this. So it's up to them. I have a feeling we're going to get Eddie Thorpe going against Trick Williams at Vengeance Day in a strap match. And I think that's going to be the number one contenders matchup for whoever wins that to face off against the NXT champion at Stand and Deliver, because that's their next big event after Vengeance Day. So I feel that's where we're headed there. What other important details happened on NXT this week? We had Lexis King. Lexis King, who is the NXT Heritage Cup champion, comes out to the ring. He talks to the people about tricking them, talking about how he was only fooling them to not really say he's not following in his father's footsteps, but he is, because he has his father in him, and how he's going to get rid of the Heritage Cup rules. He's getting rid of the rounds. He's getting rid of the point systems. He's basically going to make that match sudden death. So basically a standard one-on-one matchup. And out would walk JDC, formerly known as Fandango. They'll play his Fandango music. His Fandango Titantron will pop up on the screen. The people would cheer for it. You would see some people start Fandangoing in the crowd. And JDC comes in. He thanks the people for that. He talks about how NXT is an important period of time for him. And again, just thanks them for chanting and doing the Fandangoing for him. But he will reintroduce himself as JDC, representing TNA. And he wants to take that Heritage Cup away from Lexis King because the system is always acquiring gold, and they want to do that here. So we get a match made for Lexis King going against JDC next week on NXT. And I like how we are putting this, because you get NXT guys popping over on TNA, and now you having TNA guys pop over on NXT. I like this. Hopefully we get Moose pop up on NXT. Hopefully we get the system pop up over NXT, because again, I have to sidestep this. Moose and Eddie Edwards are two guys that have been waving that NXT, the TNA banner for a long time, and never really got the shot to be on the WWE board. I mean, they had different times that they could have signed contracts with WWE. Moose back in the mid 2010 era, same thing with Eddie, but they stuck with TNA because they wanted to be TNA guys. They wanted to be the people that was leading the charge for TNA in this wrestling situation. So now with them having this business with WWE and TNA having that partnership with NXT, I would like to see Moose, Eddie Edwards, some of the guys that have really been the flag bearers for TNA to get their shot over at WWE in this partnership. So with JDC being the guy to step up for the system coming over, I would like to see Moose and Eddie pop over sometime soon rather than later. Truly, for me. What else happened big on NXT? We got Ethan Page and Javon Evans having a match at Vengeance Day, only if Javon Evans can get medically cleared, because remember, he got his mouth shut wired. And for the last couple of weeks, he's been going after Ethan Page constantly. And again, Ava's been trying to stop him, saying you can't do that because you're not medically cleared, all that. So again, they have their match set for Vengeance Day, which we're more than likely going to get, but you got to quote unquote get medically cleared. Javon Evans guys too. It seems like we're having some problems in the D'Angelo family, because this week, Rich Holland, he had a match against Stax, the underboss of the D'Angelo family, and outside the ring, you had Tony D'Angelo, you had Luca Crucifino, and you also had what's the other girl named with Tony Rizzo. They were out there to cheer on Stax, and you got Izzy Dame, who's been kind of like coming to the defense of Tony D'Angelo. She got in there, tried to big boot Ridge. Ridge would stop her right in her tracks, and that's when Izzy would leave the ring. Ridge would ultimately hit the Redeemer on Stacks, and Ridge will get a match with Tony D'Angelo next week in a steel cage because Ridge tells Tony that he would have beat Tony a couple weeks ago for the North American Championship if Izzy didn't pop into the ring. And Tony would say that I don't need my family to beat him, so he's fine with them having a steel cage match for the North American Championship. So that's set up next week. I have a feeling, just a feeling here, that Ridge more than likely is going to win the North American Championship next week. And we're going to start the feud, or at least the breadcrumbs of the feud to start for Tony and Stacks. Because Stacks is starting to feel a type of way about Tony either not being there for him and the rest of the family the way that the family's been there for him, or I feel that Stacks might be feeling like too much of, they like to say what, too big for his britches. Because usually when the underboss is the underboss for some time, they usually feel that they need to now be the boss of the family. I can see that kind of being the feud or the storyline reason for Stacks and Tony. And I can see them having a match at Stand and Deliver, and that'll probably be Tony's last stand, and he'll be going up to the main roster. That's the way I see they're probably going to do Tony and sign him off on NXT. But again, we got a couple months for that. But next week, I think that'll be like the first starting piece for that officially. Anything else that was big to happen on NXT? Stephanie Vacour, she defeated JC Jane, and that gives her more momentum as she's going against Fallon Henley for the Women's North American Championship next week at Vengeance Day. So that's cool with that. Sol Ruka and Zarya, they defeated Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley. Cool. I think that's about it of big time important stuff. I mean, Kalani Jordan, she did defeat Karma Petrovich, but that got reversed after Kalani Jordan applied back the crossface chicken wing on Carmen after the match was over, because we're starting to see a more aggressive side of Kalani Jordan. So we'll have to wait and see what's up with that. But I think that's everything that's of importance that happened on NXT this week. So that was your NXT TNA wrestling highlights of the week there. And now I want to move over to the main roster. The main roster, as I mentioned, we had the Royal Rumble winners. You had Jey Uso and Charlotte Flair pop up on Raw and SmackDown. Charlotte Flair popped up on Raw, SmackDown, NXT. And also you had Elimination Chamber qualifiers, because John Cena, he entered the Elimination Chamber literally after the Royal Rumble, because he was at the press conference or the post conference, whatever you want to call it, for the Royal Rumble, and he sat there and he told the people point blank that he's entering it because he's John Cena. And he's not doing it for his pride and ego. He's doing it for the company, because he said it's best for business, and how he needs to win number 17. He doesn't want to, but he needs to win number 17, because when he wins number 17, he wants to shake the hand of the person that's going to win number 18. So basically, John Cena's trying to set the bench for someone to outbeat him and just try to up the game of the other competitors. Now, I feel that John Cena cut like a heelish type of promo at that Royal Rumble press conference, post conference, if you will, because John Cena, again, if you remember when he talked about how he only has one more year to do this, and this is his last official year, he talked about how he isn't going to take this away from any other type of person in the back. He isn't going to try to just leverage himself in there, because he knows how it feels to be a person on the road, working their tail off night in and night out for a big superstar to come back in, all that type of stuff. And now for him to do a complete 180 after he came so close to winning the Royal Rumble, and he says, I'm entering the chamber, I'm not doing no qualifying matchup because I am John Cena. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into this company. I deserved it. That I deserved it line, you never say that as a good guy character. That's always like reserved for a villain-esque character. And if we're going that way with John Cena, it's going to be real interesting to see how this next, couple of months or this year in general just falls into play with John. Because for him wanting that 17, because he said it's best for business, and that's another line that is associated with a heel, a bad guy, because a good guy don't say it's best for business. You only associate that, especially in the WWE, with the authority. Someone in power saying this is best for business. Like, shut up, listen to me, this is what's best. A good guy doesn't say that. So, again, just a couple things that I did point out in that. But, yeah, John Cena, he's the big dog. He's entered into that chamber qualifier. And we had other qualifying matches this week to see who would be alongside John Cena inside that Elimination Chamber for the men's side. And as of right now, the men that will be with John Cena so far is CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. They won their qualifying matches. CM Punk went against Sami Zayn on Monday Night Raw when Drew McIntyre had to go against Jimmy Uso and LA's Knight. Now, the other three spots inside the chamber has not been filled out yet. Those matches will happen this upcoming week. It will be Rey Mysterio versus Logan Paul on Monday Night Raw, as well as Seth Rollins going against Finn Balor. And then on SmackDown, you'll have the final spot, which will be covered by Braun Strowman going against Damian Priest, going against Jacob Fatu. My picks for all three of these will be Logan Paul, Jacob Fatu, and more than likely Seth Rollins, the way they're going to go about it. So I can see for the men, all in all, it will be John Cena, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul, Jacob Fatu, and Seth Rollins. That seems like a good Elimination Chamber matchup for the men's side. Now, for the women's side, right now you have Liv Morgan, Bianca Belair, and Alexa Bliss. All three of them women won their qualifying matches. Liv Morgan won hers by disqualification whenever she went against Io Sky on Monday Night Raw. Rhea Ripley will come down to kind of even out the score because Liv has Raquel in her corner, and Raquel will go after Liv. Well, not Liv, excuse me. Raquel will go after Rhea, and Rhea would take care of Raquel. Liv would grab Rhea by the hair, and by just proxy of this, Rhea would quickly strike Liv. The referee would see Liv get struck, and that's whenever call for the bell. That will cost Io her shot, so now Liv takes that spot. Bianca Belair, she went against Piper Niven on SmackDown, and she won against Piper, so that's how she got the spot. Alexa Bliss, she had her match on SmackDown, and she won against Candice LeRae, so now you have Alexa taking that spot. 3 more spots have not been filled out. They will be filled by this upcoming week's matches. You have Bayley going against Lyra Valkyria on Monday Night Raw. You have Chelsea Green going against Naomi on SmackDown. And more than likely on Raw, Roxanne Perez going against Raquel, because I don't see that happening on NXT. So that will more than likely go to pass on Raw. And for me, I think we're going to have Liv, Bianca, Alexa, excuse me. I'll throw it in. Why not throw in Lyra in this? Throw Naomi in this, because I don't see Chelsea being that. I mean, we could have Chelsea in there. I don't think it's going to hurt her, but I don't think you'll have both of your mid-card champions in there. I think Chelsea Green is more of the cowardly type of champion that even if she wins against Naomi, you'll probably get a couple fun spots, but the Elimination Chamber, I think it'll hurt her body like that, and I think Naomi will have a star-making performance in there, so I'll give it all to Naomi, but you can go without the Chelsea or Naomi there. And Roxanne and Raquel, we could do the Raquel thing because it'll be Liv and Raquel, and it'll be a nice little moment to see how they're going to take care of this. Or we could do Roxanne because she was the Iron Woman in the Women's Royal Rumble this year. And this will be a nice little showcase for her as well, for people to still believe in her and showcase her off. So, I don't know on these, to be honest with you. The women's one is going to be pretty hard. But if I had to pick one, just pick Lyra beating Bayley, Naomi beating Chelsea. And for me personally, I want to see what Roxanne Perez got. Give Roxanne inside that Elimination Chamber. So that will be my 3 picks for the men and women to fill out the rest of that chamber spots. And the highlights that happened on Raw and SmackDown collectively, as I said, CM Punk and Sami Zayn, they had their match to see who's going to pick that spot in the chamber. Punk would beat Sami. After the match was over, you see Punk extend his hand out to Sami because this is their first time ever wrestling one another. So they would shake hands with one another. And out from behind, you see Kevin Owens attack Sami. That would thrust Sami to hit Punk on the shoulder. Punk will fall out of the ring. And Kevin Owens just starts beating up on Sami and then hits him with a package pile driver. And you would get a video of Kevin Owens explaining why he attacked Sami on Twitter, but then they'll play it on SmackDown. And the gist of that video is Kevin Owens blames Sami for not helping him at the Royal Rumble. Sami Zayn just stood there and watched as Kevin Owens would put Cody would try to end his career. And Sami didn't lift not one finger. While later that night, Kevin Owens watched in the back as Sami Zayn ran into the Rumble and helped out Roman Reigns when Roman was getting beat up. And that just made Kevin Owens, snap. He said that he will never forgive Sami. He calls him a despicable human being. And he said he's not through with Sami. So my thing is, I thought we would get Sami and Kevin Owens at the Elimination Chamber. And we probably still could because they got until March the 1st, I believe? Yeah, March 1st. So they still got another couple weeks. Because if Cody was able to pop up on SmackDown after getting pile driven with the package pile driver at Saturday Night's Main Event and pop up literally the next Friday Night SmackDown, why can't Sami pop up next week on Raw holding his neck and the neck brace or something like that? So I still think we might get Sami and Kevin Owens to have a match at the Elimination Chamber because I don't know we do a whole Mania thing with them. I don't, to be completely honest. I think we do something else with those three. I still think we need to have the Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, and Kevin Owens thing going against the Bloodline type of guys. Have Roman and Sami and Jimmy group up together to take on Drew, Seth, and KO. That's what could be fun. But again, I don't know. There's a whole lot of things that could happen leading up to WrestleMania, so that's going to be just one of those things. But I don't know if we do. I don't know if we do or see Kevin and Sami at WrestleMania, or they're just going to pull the trigger and just give it off for Elimination Chamber because they're in Canada. So we'll wait and see in these next couple weeks. What else was of newsworthy? Jey Uso, Charlotte Flair, they're the winners of their respective Royal Rumbles. And Raw and SmackDown both started the exact same way. Jey Uso coming out through the crowd, getting into the ring, doing his whole yeeting with the crowd. And on both Raw and SmackDown, once he was done yeeting at first, the crowd would chant, "Do it again," like an encore business. And Jey would oblige to the crowd. He would look into the camera, do the repeat sign to tell production, "Hey, can we play my music again for the people?" And they will do it. So you got Homeboy doing his business again for the people because he's a man of the people. I put Jey as the new people's champion, and I don't think it's bad to name him that. So Jey is now, again, to me, the new people's champion here. And on Monday Night Raw, different from SmackDown, when Jey had the microphone, you started to see he was completely overwhelmed. My man was all just energized. He tried to get his words out, but he couldn't get it out. And someone said that he was overstimulated on Twitter because you could see him just filled with all emotions. You see him start tearing out the side of his face. And I think this is nothing but just pure emotion showing out of Jey, because I mentioned it on the Royal Rumble review how Jey started out as a tag team guy 10 years ago. He was doing tag team stuff, and he was always labeled as a tag team guy. Jey even mentioned it on Raw, how they pitched him as a tag team guy, nothing but a tag team guy, and how when you're a tag team guy, they only see you in this one spot. But now look at him now. He's main event Jey Uso, and he won the Royal Rumble, and now he's going to cash his ticket to go to WrestleMania and be in the main event. And it's no longer just a nickname. No, he is a legit main eventer now. So it was a good moment for Jey. So he was able to get that out on Raw, right? Then Gunther comes out. Gunther talks smack to Jey, saying Jey challenging him at WrestleMania will do nothing for Gunther's legacy. Gunther kind of wanted someone like a Roman Reigns or John Cena or CM Punk to win the Rumble. So whenever he goes against them at the Rumble and beats them at Mania, it would do something for Gunther's legacy. But Gunther has already beaten Jey, so if Jey picks Gunther, it's just going to be nothing but a big colossal beatdown that Gunther's going to give to Jey. So Jey tells Gunther, I'm not going to make my decision yet because I got to go to SmackDown, but you guys will find out sooner. So he ends up going to SmackDown. He goes and has a little one-on-one with Cody, friendly chat with those two gentlemen. Cody would reminisce of them winning tag titles, having good times and all that. Cody would tell Jey of his little injuries, little bangs up that he got from the ladder match that he had with Kevin Owens. But he tells him that the main event is all Jey's. It's Jey's decision which championship he wants to pick. He can either go after Gunther or he can go after Cody. And Cody tells Jey, if you do pick me, you do know that I still have to finish what I'm doing. Because my story isn't complete yet, because I haven't held on to this title for a whole year, basically. Because last year at Mania, he won it, and this year it seems like Cody's going to walk into Mania, but the question will be, will he walk out Mania? So that's another extended part of the story that Cody has to have. And he tells Jey, if you happen to pick me, just letting you know, tonight's going to be our last night being cordial with one another, because it'll be go time. So they shake hands like men. And then you get Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga come out. Jacob tells Cody that last year he took that title away from his family. And now his family needs that championship. And he goes to Jey and tells him that, Jey, you're not the guy to take that title and bring it back to the family. So we get to a brawl. It leads to the main event of SmackDown. Cody and Jey would defeat Jacob and Tama Tonga. Cody would hit Tama Tonga with the crossroads, get the pin 1, 2, 3 when Jey would hit a suicide dive onto Jacob Fatu outside the ring. Then as SmackDown ends, you see Solo Sikoa come in all black hood and all that, and you just see him hit the Samoan Spike on Cody. So it seems like Solo Sikoa is back, and by the way, Solo Sikoa wasn't in the Royal Rumble. He wasn't at all. You would think he should have been, but he was not. So this adds some intrigue. Is he still running Jacob and Tama? Did he have to get some knowledge from the big man, The Rock? Will we see Rock? Because Rock still plays a big part in this. But I mean, there's a lot of, again, as I said, when I talk about the chamber stuff, there's a lot of different ways they can go about it. And this one's going to be a real interesting ride for the men's side. Now, on the opposite side for the women winner, Charlotte Flair, they played it completely opposite from Raw and SmackDown whenever she pulled up. On Raw, she pulled up as a babyface, which is a good guy on Raw, and she tried to talk to the people and talk about how she missed them. She missed being in the ring. And at first they cheered her when she came out, but once the music stopped, just like Hogan, but not to the degree of Hogan that they did on the debut episode of Netflix, they booed Charlotte. Charlotte started getting some boos. And she said, you guys can boo me all you want, but I did miss you guys because last year was hard for me. And again, she's trying to get into her personal bag that you see the wrestlers do whenever they're out for so long. They come back and they try to get personal with the audience so that the audience can feel the pain that they went through. But crowd ain't feeling it. The crowd just boos Charlotte, and Charlotte just takes it on the chin and says, okay, this is where we're going. All right. And then she says, you guys want to boo me because I'm great? Yeah, I'm great. I'm the greatest thing that has walked in this WWE Women's Division. I'm at the top. And again, she did a nice little pivot from being the babyface to now going over into the heel side. So then that's when Rhea Ripley comes out. Rhea comes out and says that she's happy that Charlotte is back and that Charlotte won the Royal Rumble. And Rhea would say that she hopes that Charlotte picks her because it's 1-1 at Mania for both of those ladies. And Rhea wants to beat Charlotte again at Mania because Charlotte has earned Rhea Ripley's respect. And Charlotte would see Rhea, hear Rhea out, and tell Rhea point blank that you coming out here before I even make my decision shows me that you are a kid. And that proves to Rhea that Charlotte doesn't respect her. So now it gives Rhea more ambition to tell Charlotte to pick her because now she wants to beat the respect into Charlotte at Mania. So you get Charlotte leaving. She goes to NXT. Cool, we all know that, but she's not picking the NXT title. Point blank. She goes over to SmackDown. She goes to SmackDown now. People, again, cheer once the music hits. Once it stops, get to the boos. But this time it's more lenient, 50-50. Cheer and boo. And Charlotte, now going heel, she asks the people, do you want to cheer me or do you want to boo me? She says, here's the deal. It doesn't matter because I'm on everyone's mind. I'm on everyone's tongue. I am the wrestling world's obsession from the way that I look, from the way that I come out, from my last name, from my accolades. Now Charlotte's really digging into like, I'm really her type of mentality, right? So we get that from Charlotte. She talks about her trip over to Raw, to NXT, and now she's here to see Tiffany. Tiffany Stratton comes out. Tiffany Stratton, just like Rhea, says that she's happy to see Charlotte here. She's a Charlotte fan. She hopes that she gets to wrestle Charlotte at WrestleMania. Again, another pick-me type situation here. And how all that. And then Charlotte tells Tiffany that just like Rhea, she sees Tiffany, not a kid, but as a child. Because Tiffany's out here begging for Charlotte to pick her so Charlotte can make her a star. So here's my overall thing on this, right? Charlotte winning, cool. I get it. I already let my grief out on that on the Royal Rumble review, and I'm not going to do it here. I hate my champions being the ones that say, pick me. I hate that. The champions should never ever say, pick me, pick me, pick me. No. The Royal Rumble winner should be just stalking the champions. And the champions should just be having an eye on the Royal Rumble winner, doing the whole hand deal like, come on, if you want it, come on then. Not saying verbally, pick me. Don't do that. Because it's not good. It brings me back to Roman Reigns whenever 2021 Edge won. And he was doing the exact same thing that Charlotte's doing right now. He popped over to Raw, popped over to NXT, popped over to SmackDown to see who he's going to face. And Roman Reigns, being the champion that he was, and being as Roman Reigns is, like, knowing how good he is in the ring and knowing that he is the main attraction, he got pissed off with Edge, like, wasting his time. Because he knows that Edge is going to pick him. Because there's no other champion like Roman Reigns. There was no other person like Roman, and Roman knew it. So Roman would get pissed. And he got pissed off to the point that he just yelled into the mic, why is he playing games with me? Why is he playing games with me? You can look for that infamous clip. That's what I want my champions to feel like. Why are you wasting my time? You know who you're going to pick. You know you're going to pick me. So why are you wasting time with us? Hurry up. Let's get this done. Let's get it finalized so we can get this on the way. Don't waste my time. That's what I want my champions to feel like. Cody can't do that, but he could kind of do that with Jey, but he wants to go the friendly route with it. Gunther, he kind of did it. He told Jey point blank, don't you pick me, because if you pick me, I'm going to tear you up. But you got both female Rhea and Tiffany, who are good in their respective sides. They should not be going to Charlotte and saying, pick me, pick me. No, I don't like that. That's just me as a fan nitpicking something. But I think we all know we're going to get Charlotte versus Tiffany. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, next week on SmackDown, Tiffany will be defending her WWE Women's Championship against Nia Jax because, well, Nia isn't going to do the Elimination Chamber, so they're going to give her championship rematch here next week. So Tiffany will be going against Nia there, and again, Tiffany's going to win that, so we're more likely going to get Charlotte and Tiffany, unless they're going to pull a whoop-de-doo, and we're going to get Charlotte and Rhea again at Mania, which I'm not mad at that one because the WrestleMania 39 match was hella excellent. So again, we'll just have to wait and see with that. But if I had money to bet on it, I would say Tiffany and Charlotte at Mania. Is there anything else that really came of importance on the main roster? No, I think that's about it. So with that, that was your WWE Main Roster wrestling highlights of the week. And now, before I get you guys out of here, since this is Black History Month, I forgot to do this last week. I have to give a appreciation or a spotlight to a Black wrestler. This is a segment that I stole from the podcast, the Public Enemies podcast. I did this, a couple years ago when I saw them do it, and I was like, oh, that's a great segment to do because I'm a Black fan, and a lot of Black people don't get enough attention and spotlight in the professional wrestling landscape. So I've been doing this, or at least I took this segment from them 2 years ago, and I've been running with this. So I always want to give credit to where it's due, first and foremost, before I do this. So again, Public Enemy podcast, go listen to those guys. Great, excellent podcast to listen to. But I want to give a appreciation spotlight onto Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley, as we all know, he's in AEW right now. Half of the AEW World Tag Team Champions with Shelton Benjamin and a group called the Hurt Syndicate. Bobby Lashley, I noticed Bobby in, I would say, fall of 2005. I had to look up his Wikipedia page just to make sure I got the right year here. Fall of 2005 when he came up into SmackDown in his first feuds with Simon Dean. Bobby Lashley was a guy that I was thoroughly impressed with because how do you not get impressed with it when you see someone like Bobby? Straight up, just a guy that's jacked and yoked, and he just does everything. He's speed, he's power. Bobby didn't talk when he first got to SmackDown. He was just there being completely muscle. So that's how I first noticed Bobby. But as you started to see, as progression, you started to see where they were going to go with him. He ends up beating John Bradshaw Layfield for the U.S. Championship. He ends up holding the U.S. Championship for some time. And then he ends up losing it to, I believe, Finley or Mr. Kennedy, one of the two, right? And then they start pushing him off to go over to ECW. He goes over to ECW, becomes the ECW champion over there. And that's when I really started to take notice of it because ECW was a brand that I watched on Sci-Fi. So once he becomes ECW champion, he starts having a feud with Test, and then he gets that big Starlight moment. He's been selected to represent Donald Trump in that Battle of the Billionaires match against Vince McMahon's representative Umaga at WrestleMania 23, and a match that I personally wanted to see, and I got to see that highlights of it on YouTube before the DVD came out. So Bobby gets that. He gets into that feud with the McMahons now. And now I'm really rooting for Bobby Lashley throughout that whole feud with the McMahons because I thought, man, that's crappy. You lost your hair, and now you're going after the guy that represented your other opponent. That was crappy. So Bobby Lashley has to be the underdog fighting against the big bad owner and his hired muscle, Umaga, and the son, Shane. He ends up overcoming it. Wins the ECW Championship again, and then he gets to hold that title for a little bit of time, then he gets stripped of it because he gets moved over to Raw. And now he gets over to Raw, and I'm thinking, okay, now, all right, let's see what he does there. And then he gets puts in WWE Championship matches. I'm like, okay, we might get Bobby as WWE Champion. Especially when he has the match against John Cena in, I believe, 2007? 2007, he goes off against John, and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to beat John Cena in the Great American Bash. I can't wait for it. And then Womp womp. John Cena wins low. John Cena wins. Bobby doesn't do it. Bobby ends up getting hurt, and then he ends up getting released. He pulls up into TNA a couple years later, and now I don't need to go through the whole deal with that, but basically Bobby Lashley dominates TNA once he gets up there in his second run. First run was okay, but the second run's the one that you really talk about when you talk about Bobby Lashley's career in TNA. Goes there, hooks up with MVP, hooks up with Kenny King, and they showcase Bobby as the dominant act. He wins the TNA World title. He holds on to that mug for a good period of time, and then he ends up again losing it, and then he regains the championship once again. And then guess what? He ends up now being a dominant force in TNA. He starts holding up almost every single title except for the tag title. He holds the X Division Championship. He holds their TNA Legends or King of the Mountain Championship 1 to 2. He ends up holding 3 championships all at one point, showing how dominant he was as a competitor. Then he ends up going back to WWE. He ends up teaming up with Lio Rush. Lio Rush, great manager for Bobby at the time, and I still hope that we get that tandem of Lio Rush going into the Hurt Syndicate at one point, so we can get the tandem once again. And they are a nice pairing. Bobby's getting, okay, we're starting to see them putting some stock into Bobby Lashley now. All right, cool. And then they split off, and then Bobby goes up, and now he's with MVP. Pandemic happens. Now we're starting to see the beginning of the Hurt business. And the Hurt business becomes one of the most over groups in the pandemic. It's legitimate. It's legitimized because of Bobby and because of Sheldon, because of MVP. But you see Bobby as the figure. Bobby is the middleman. We know that we want to make Bobby the world champion. And then we finally get it. 2021, he takes it off the Miz. Bobby becomes WWE champion in the pandemic era. And then they go off to WrestleMania. And instead of giving Drew McIntyre the win in front of the people, they keep it on Bobby. Bobby defeats Drew McIntyre in front of a live audience at WrestleMania, and he retains the WWE Championship. That tells you how much stock the WWE had into Bobby, even though they did not do much with the Hurt Syndicate. Once the pandemic was over, they still had stock in Bobby, and they showed you how much the fans cared for Bobby. And Bobby has constantly been a fan favorite since then on out. From his time leaving out of WWE, he was still a fan favorite, to now him going into AEW and doing this business over there with the Hurt Syndicate. They are still over, and Bobby is still over. Everywhere that Bobby has went, he has been over. Even when he did MMA, he had a great record in MMA. I think his record is 15-2. So again, Bobby Lashley is a guy that was able to do everything and still stay jacked, still stay fit. And guess what? He doesn't have no bad attributes to his name. You won't find any bad, I'll say, controversy on him at all. And Bobby's just a modeled professional of what you would want. And again, that's why I want to put a spotlight on Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley is that guy. Bobby Lashley is a person I feel that when you look up professional and you look at someone that could be a person that is the face of your company, you look up someone like a Bobby. Okay? So for me, that's the reason I'm giving him the spotlight of the week for this week in Black History Month. Bobby Lashley. Again, he had a great career entering into WWE, leaving out of WWE, going into TNA, having a great career at TNA, and now he's moving over to AEW. And hopefully, as he's over there at AEW with his compadres of MVP and Shelton Benjamin. And more likely now, since Cedric Alexander has been released, by the way, I just found that out. When his 90 days are up, I expect Cedric Alexander to pop up over there, and we'll get the whole legit Hurt business over there in AEW, the Hurt Syndicate in AEW, more specifically Bobby, MVP, Shelton, and Cedric, will show you what that tandem can do when you actually put time into them in front of a live audience. They're going to be the most dominant over group in all of professional wrestling because we all love them. And Bobby, again, will be more likely the focal point, and they'll put him back as being a world champion over there in AEW. I feel that way because, again, he's a model citizen. He is a guy that you should put some stock into heavily. But yeah, that's the reason why I'm giving Bobby the spotlight of the week for this week in Black History Month. So with that being said, now this is the end of the show. This has been your Wrestling Highlights of the Week, presented by My 2 Cents Podcast, hosted by G2. He is I and I am him. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Please, if you did, subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, any other podcasting sites, just subscribe to it, because when you do that, you get new episodes when I drop every Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday. Every single one of these episodes are completely different from each other. So I hope you enjoy what you listen to. And also, tomorrow, my Sunday episode, I'll be talking about everything that happened in the news, the big topics. So if you want to listen to that, you'll enjoy tomorrow's episode, hopefully. So with that said, again, this has been Wrestling Highlights of the Week, presented by My 2 Cents Podcast. I hope you guys have a great Saturday or a great day, whenever you listen to this. Be blessed, everyone. Bye-bye now.